Kevin, what's going on? Welcome to the show.
Jordan, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I know it's going to be a good conversation. We were just chatting a little bit before we hit record, and I want to kind of continue that, which is, what are your thoughts on building a personal brand to, on LinkedIn in particular? How do you do that so that it actually works for your business, but not sell your soul in the whole process? How have you seen people do it eloquently, or maybe the mistakes that you've seen people made to avoid?
That's a really good question, Jordan, because the thing about LinkedIn in particular, LinkedIn is a very interesting space because it is built on this foundational house of cards that's really about imitation, right? Where we have seen a couple of people who have really taken off early on in the personal brand space and have turned that into a personal brand as a way to monetize their personality and their products and basically to become more like them, right? I think there are a ton of people that are out there just saying like, "Oh, I would love to be like Justin Welsh. I would love to be able to monetize my ideas, to be able to just throw content out there and essentially monetize being a creator." And the thing about that structure is then you just kind of have to talk about LinkedIn all day in order to become that person. So you become this Ouroboros snake chasing its own tail of a person who talks about LinkedIn in order to monetize talking about LinkedIn. And that just bores me to tears, for God's sake. I find that to be relentlessly uninteresting. And so when we talk about the idea of a personal brand, there are two words in there that I think most people leave out the key elements of it, which is that A, it should be personal, and B, it should be a brand. They don't put in any aspects of their self. They only put in the, here's what I have learned from these other people about how to monetize LinkedIn and become uber successful at monetizing LinkedIn. And they've also lost the idea of a brand. There should be some kind of visual and verbal identity that give it a unique personality and a unique voice in the space. So I guess the thing that I see people doing wrong is that there's just this culture of imitation and this culture of following trends rather than setting them. They believe that these $5 hooks or these single trends that are popularized and thrown around all over the space will help them get into that dream objective of LinkedIn ghostwriter or whatever that profession is that they want to be.
Yeah, the failure to have any distinction for yourself when building a personal brand, I see that as a major issue. And then two, I think there's a bigger issue, and you touched on it there. The whole ecosystem is turning into this pyramid scheme of, I want to be this person who all they do is create courses to sell to other course creators, and then I give them affiliate codes. And if you start to put this out on a whiteboard, it starts to look a lot like a pyramid. And and everybody gets sold on it. They get sold on this idea that, oh, I'm going to be the rich and famous course creator and work 5 hours a day, when the survivorship bias that comes through on those creators is overwhelming. And then you have so many people investing so much money, doing all these things, creating courses. I mean, shit, I created a course. We were doing it alongside our agency, pushing it. And it was like a, hey, here's how you can actually, you're not going to get a Ferrari, but here's how you can side hustle and actually make, you can make a living kind of owning your own business. It was so much time for me selling that thing, and it was a $150 course, that I was like, this is so much effort to like be constantly pushing this. I did it for like 2 months. We sold, I don't know, 10 of them. And I was like, oh, great. I made like $1,500. And this, sure, it helps some people. And now I'm like, yeah, it's on Gumroad. I don't even know what the price is now. Maybe it's $50. Maybe it's $6. I just put it up there and was like, whoever wants it can get it. I don't care anymore. I'm not promoting this. The agency is the main thing. I think that that's more so when people see that stuff on LinkedIn and everyone's posting these self-aggrandizing pieces of content about their journey and their struggle, and now how they're a six-figure creator, as you put it before we were talking, and we're like, hey, anyone who's a six-figure creator means they made $100,001. Um, And no shade on that, but let's keep it real. You
Yeah.
did say something. Or yeah, sorry, jump in.
No, I was just saying, yes, I find that six figure thing that gets thrown around all the time to be just such a ridiculous, just a ridiculous way to communicate absolute bullshit. Because it's just,
Yeah.
I see all of the ways in which language is hedged, right? It's like I've written up to X% on so many ads that I know when you're hedging your language to make you sound bigger than you actually are. I know all the telltale signs and they constantly are using them.
And I think so many people do, where we see through and we read through it and we're like, oh. So then it comes now where it's this level of like, I don't want to say it's disingenuous, but it doesn't acknowledge like this semantic expansion of a lot of these words to go, actually, like we all know what you mean and you're talking shit or you're bragging or you're making yourself seem super cool to really make people under you in their journey look up to you. But those who are actually doing things don't, they cheer you on from like a yay, I'm so happy you did it, bless their heart, like, it's very there's sympathy. I don't think it's belief in the person's abilities sometimes, which is like a very weird line to go on. And I wanted to talk to you about that because you said it a little bit on the intro with this, like people who they get on there, they're posting, and now they're posting to feed this machine and it's posting, and they end up doing these frameworks or these sympathy baits. Talk to me a little bit about how you go about, how you would tell a story, and then how it's like where you see when people are actually full of shit and they're just regurgitating somebody else's story.
Yeah, there's a lot in there that I can go off of. But first, I think there is this idea of someone probably got on LinkedIn because they wanted to share their expertise and they saw this as a viable channel to build their business or to expand their reach or get the job they wanted, whatever. They wanted to demonstrate that they had a certain capability. But the trends that they started to see, or they got into a position where they now became not a person who was an expert in one thing and was communicating about it. They now became an expert in LinkedIn, right? And so now they become a person who is feeding this machine of lots of advice on not how I became an expert in my field, but how I use my expertise in my field to grow a business on LinkedIn, which now becomes I'm teaching other people how to LinkedIn rather than I'm showing other people a useful skill that's in their field. And it's been breeding this constant cycle of people not taking the advice of the original thing of like, oh, I can develop this skill set and become better at what I do. It's like, oh, I can become a six-figure digital nomad that sells my own courses. And this breeding of imitation, this breeding of the same goals of being that digital creator has just created a space where people are trying to follow the trends that got a certain creator to that position. And there are a couple of different tactics that I've seen being used that. And part of it is, oh, I'm going to use the same hooks that everybody uses. I'm not going to say how to, I'm going to say how I, because that's the thing that demonstrates my expertise and authority. Or I'm going to use a storytelling post, which in their definition is I'm going to unload a bunch of trauma in the most performative way possible. I'm going to talk about my struggles and put myself as the hero of this journey that has gotten me to the place where I am. And it all just feels so phony and transparent. It all feels like viral clickbait in the way that a lot of Fox Searchlight pictures in November and December feel like Oscar bait, Like there's just this way in which they are trying to communicate for virality rather than communicate in a way that is building their brand and telling their story authentically. I think that you can use LinkedIn to tell a story about who you are and how your brand is doing something amazing. You can do that, but I think these trends and these frameworks of how that storytelling is defined is lessening people's brand and lessening the type of content that we're seeing in our feeds.
Yeah, it's you're spot on, where people have lost their way, where they came there to talk about, let's say, photography, and they were talking about how to be the best photographer, and now they've turned into how to be the best LinkedIn person. On top of that, using, like you're saying, this imitation, and what I see it as is two things, or two different things. There's sympathy bait, and I'm going to trauma bomb you on your feed. And what trauma bombing is for the listener, right? Or how I define it is when you get on those posts and someone goes, hey, horrific event happened to me when I was a kid, and now that blah, 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 and I came through the other side. Now you got to think about people when they open up LinkedIn in the morning, they're having their coffee, they're scrolling through. They're not thinking that we're going to a mutual therapy session, right? They're not sitting in that, men's group or whatever it may be, the therapy room where it's a safe space to not only unload that, but to receive it. You're prepared to receive it in that space. Certain Reddit threads, you're prepared to receive it in those Reddit threads. Probably a better place for those where you just want to unload things. People all give it the sympathy like and engagement, and then that reinforces that for the creator. They think, this is working, I should do more of that. So now they start to latch onto that, stretch the truth in some cases, retell that story. It becomes very manipulative, performative. Now that's a problem. I don't like that. On the other side of the coin, and people are going, well, how do I do this? I see it as empathizing with your customer is a different thing. They say, hey, look, when I started out, I couldn't afford a camera. So I went and rented one from the library. I went into the local university and I did a thing that was some ingenious way for me to get a camera so I could start taking photos to launch my photography business. In that type of post, you're saying, hey, I've been broke before. It sucked, but there's a way and you can find out how to do it to launch your business, and you can start to inspire people. And it's kind of like, if you've ever heard the saying, what's the difference between art and porn? You know when you see it. It's the same thing with like relatability and cringe. It's so hard to define, but you know when you see it.
It's so true. It's so true. It is a fine line. It is something that is about taste. It's about creative execution. It's about the way you know how to tell the story. It's when you're offloading it in a way that it seems like, I mean, we've all seen the Facebook posts that are like vague booking where someone is like talking about something that's awful that's happened, and it feels like, okay, this person is literally just asking us to inquire what's going on so that they can then vaguely be like, I'll have to tell you about it later, right? Like, when somebody is performing online versus somebody that is actually telling you something that is authentic about themselves. You know it when you see it. The way that I think people can avoid that trap is to stay away from the things that you think are going to get viral. If your intentions are, I think this is going to go viral, or this is something that I could see really, really taking off, there's a good chance that you're probably going to push it into the direction of performative, because you are telling your story for the purpose of an audience reaction, rather than telling a story because you think that this is something that represents you authentically. This is something that tells about your experience, tells about your tenacity, tells about the way in which you have overcome something, or has value in showing somebody how they can overcome the challenges that you've overcome. Like, if you're telling the story to say, hey, these are some lessons that I learned along the way, and I would love for you to be able to jump over some of these hurdles that I figured out, you're much more likely to be creating something that feels real and authentic than if you say, ooh, this is something that I could see really, really capturing people's attention and getting a lot of likes.
I had a lady on the show, Erica Schneider, and she talked about, if you feel like you're playing a character, you shouldn't post it. And I love that, because that just speaks to, if you are being authentically yourself, talking about one of maybe the 4 content pillars you have of things you are really passionate about or about, hey, that's gravy. But this whole trend chasing versus trend setting is a really interesting topic, because it permeates across personal and brand social, right? We see a lot of advice on here that's like, here's what to do on social. And it's very creator focused and isn't really applicable to brands, right? But the trend chasing, trend setting thing, it is applicable. And you do a lot of work with brands, creative direction. You're going in, you've worked on shoots, you've been there from startup to IPO. Talk to me about the importance of putting on those creative blinders, to actually go in and that creative process to create content that isn't reacting to the brand down the roads, viral piece.
Yeah. So one of the companies that I worked for was a car insurance company. And man, that is one of the most challenging places to be creative because you are in a very, very competitive space. It's a $266 billion industry, and you have so many different companies that are competing for attention for a product that no one wants, right? Like most of the time, like I can't remember who my car insurance company is because it's not really a product that I want. It's a bill that I have that I'm legally required to have in order to drive in the state of Ohio. But that makes it a really interesting space to play around with because the thing that's going to set you apart is brand. When you have a story that's worth telling and a unique perspective on what that product is and what that service offering is, you can really stand out because there's so many different companies that are flooding the market with rejected SNL sketches, right? Like they have very cheap, inoffensive comedy that you don't know who the brand is until you see the logo at the very end. And so when there is a lot of noisy sameness, that gives you an unique opportunity to really say something new and unique. And I think that that's very true of personal brands on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very noisy space. There's a lot of sameness out there, which gives you a lot of opportunity if you genuinely have something unique to say and a new way to say it. The way I think about brand and, how do I make sure that I am focused on who I am and what I have to say rather than trying to chase the trends or trying to follow the optimizations of what makes a brand successful personally on LinkedIn? I really do try to say, okay, who is the audience that I'm talking to? What are the problems that they have? What are the capabilities that I have to show that make me a person that can solve their problems? And how can I market myself and build a brand that shows me as a disruptive person in this space? Because there's a lot of marketers, a lot of creatives, and a lot of agencies out in this space. If I'm going to break through in this noise, I'm going to have a unique message. And so I focus on not just what makes me a creative director that can do advertising and brand building for a tech company. It's why am I the creative director that they would want to work with based on my brand identity and based on the things that I have to offer.
Yeah, one of the things I found really useful to help me with my agency in doing that, which was years overdue, and we had done it for clients, but never ourselves, was actually making our personas our target personas of the type of CMO that we wanted to work with and service and type of companies. We made those, and then lo and behold, those type of clients start coming in when I have this person, Marcus, the CMO, and it's this whole, who they are, whatever. And the minute I'm always like, would this be good for Marcus? I start making my content. Am I speaking? Am I telling the story to that person? Oh, business starts to trickle in. Now, which is an interesting thing I want to talk a little bit about now. Two things. One is marrying personal brand and social in terms of using personal brand as the founder of your business to drum up the B2B business side of things. I think it's very useful. For me personally, it's been the thing that I don't make any serious amount of money from the personal brand side of things, but it funnels insane amount of agency work. So have you found that to be a really great funnel for yourself, or have they been kind of separate? How does it work on your side?
Yeah, for me, very similar. I have not tried to monetize the personal brand side of myself because honestly, I've been more focused on driving work for the business. And it's not probably the biggest driver of business, but it's definitely the biggest catalyst for the business, which is, maybe somebody who has worked with me years ago and knows what I can do. They see me on LinkedIn, they say, oh, this is what Kevin does now. That has been like the biggest catalyst, right? It's been the best way to get my message across to the right audience. And sometimes that's a totally new audience, and it is the entire driver of the business. But in most cases, it's like, oh, somebody has already had interest or already knew me from the past that has seen the stuff that I do on LinkedIn. And that has been the thing that started the conversation. If I'm giving advice to people who are thinking about, do I want to start a personal brand? How do I want to structure that? And how do I want to work it to be a funnel for my own agency or my own work? I would strongly consider exactly what you just said, which is think about who your audience is, what problems are they trying to solve, and how can I demonstrate that I am the right person that knows how to solve those problems, and build a foundational brand that is based on who you are, because this is ultimately a very human thing. When you're on these platforms and you just sound like a parrot that's repeating a lot of the same trends that other people are saying, you're not really going to stand out. You're not going to show any kind of unique factor that adds value to someone's business. But when you have a unique thing to say and a unique way to say it, and it coincides with the problems that your target audience is trying to solve, that is the recipe for a personal brand that's going to drive business.
Yeah, you can't chat GPT your way to connections and responding to people. And you see everybody trying to
Nope.
take shortcuts. And I always laugh. I'm like, they're like, I have a chat GPT comment bot. I'm like, how many comments are you doing? Like, do you think you need to do to be successful? What blog did you read? Like, who hurt you? Who hurt you on LinkedIn to tell you that, that you need to comment 1,000 times a day? What is wrong with you? Come on. Like, that's where my brain goes. I'm like,
Congratulations. You're making a bunch of really boring, shitty comments. Congratulations. I'm really proud of you. I'm sure that is doing absolutely nothing for you.
yeah, right. Building, or I guess off of this, right? There's an interesting thing with being the founder and putting yourself out there. I guess I want to know if you two things. One, what the hell's the deal with engagement pods? I feel like it's the worst kept secret in marketing, that everyone's gassing each other up and sending each other content. So one, I want to know like your thoughts on those, because I think they have a place. And then two, how much time are you spending on LinkedIn per week?
I'll start with the easy one first. The time spent on LinkedIn. That is, I try to spend an hour a day, but sometimes that explodes, right? If I get a lot of comments on something, I end up spending way more time responding. And that flexes based on, how busy I am. I try to like comment on other people's stuff when there's good stuff out there that I like and want to respond to. But sometimes I scroll through my feed and I'm like, I feel dead inside and I don't feel like I can respond to any of this because nothing is making me feel like I have something to say about this. But yeah, so it's usually about an hour and a half a day, I would say, on average. And I have since cut down on the weekends because I need to like have a life too, or else I'm gonna go insane just looking at LinkedIn posts for the rest of my life. When it comes to the engagement pods, yeah, they are a badly kept secret. There are definitely a large group of people. For those who are not aware of what an engagement pod is, it's a group of creators that get together with the sole purpose of sending each other their posts to engage with them, to boost the algorithm, to show that there is engagement happening with their posts. So they're trying to boost likes, they're trying to boost reach, they're trying to boost visibility. And I think there are ways in which that can be very innocent, which is like, hey, I have a group of like-minded creators where we just want to kind of talk about problems and we want to talk about stuff and just say, hey, there's this event here that I'm speaking at. If you want to come, great. If not, no big deal. That's more about friendship. And there's even a group that I'm a part of that is very much that, where we don't force each other to read and respond to things. We don't force each other to like stuff. It's just literally like, this is kind of a weird space to be in. And it's nice to have other people that are trying to figure it out too. And it's nice to have somebody that I can bounce ideas off of, and somebody that can tell me, oh, I was doing this thing and it wasn't working for me, and now I tried this and this is working better. Some of those things are nice to have those conversations. When it becomes a I am purposefully trying to force engagement in the same way that when people are trying to get very, very transparent engagement around trauma porn or samey hooks that they've purchased from somebody else who regurgitated them from somebody else who regurgitated them from somebody else, they all just feel like attempts at cheap shortcuts to get to a certain place of what they define success as. And I just find that to be such a miserable way to live. I just feel like it's so much effort for something that I don't know that they're getting much return off of. I don't know how profitable that even is. I feel like they're just getting these dopamine hits from seeing these engagements that they have maybe even completely purchased. They might have purchased a pod of people to respond to their stuff. And I just don't understand how anyone is getting any value from that, because it just seems so phony, so fake, so forced, and so little value getting returned.
It's sad. It's really sad. And I mean that in a way that I truly mean that it's sad, because people who are doing that are obviously longing for, like, I said this on a previous one, but admiration from others is like today's heroin. So many people can't get it and then they want it. So then they go and do these engagement pods. They put stuff in there, they force it. And then guess what happens? You get a bunch of hollow impressions. Yeah, you get impressions. All these people are hollow comments, because at the end of the day, they're not actually increasing your influence. They're not leading to dollars. Now, I get mega creators do this, and it's the same thing we talked about at the start, where there's the course creator working with the other course creator and they gas each other up. Yeah, there's blurred lines there ethically for me on that. And I think at the bottom rung, which is the creator trying to do it today, who's trying to get this engagement pod because they want to be popular on LinkedIn. It's just the wrong direction to step. Instead of, I want to learn as much as I can and then share as much as I can from that journey and see wherever it takes me, it takes me. And I say this to the listener who's thinking about it, because I remember I posted an article. I posted this. It was for Inc. magazine. And for people who don't know, behind the scenes of those websites, the Inc., the entrepreneurs, they don't get the readership you think. Your post will get like 100 reads. It's not like jillions of people. So mine had 72 reads, right? Not great. Then all of a sudden I get a notification. At that time, it was the CEO of Sprint Mobile shares my post and tags me. He was one of the 72 because he resonated with the thing I was actually saying that was true to me. And then he posted it. And it's like, then it blew up and the host got, way more reads because this person is popular. But it would have been so easy to be discouraged by the 72. But I was like, those reads were not hollow. That was my big takeaway from it. They were real. So anyone who's listening or thinking like I get small numbers, it's just a better way to live and happier way to live if you're putting out content that you're actually believing in.
Yeah, and honestly, like, this is kind of a grind, right? Like, being a creator, it takes a lot of work. It takes time, and it can be really discouraging to put the effort in and not see a return. A lot of people look at that it's really easy to look at the immediate return, which is like, comment, engagement. You get those immediate dopamine hits. But if that doesn't eventually turn into something that is an actual investment, like somebody actually says, "Hey, I see the value in what you're doing and I'd love to pay you for it," then you're really, really going to be in a lot of trouble. You're going to be in the space where I'm just putting in so much effort for so little return. If you're not enjoying it either, you're going to be spending all this time, all this energy into something that makes you miserable and makes you no money. Like, I cannot think of a more miserable existence than that, of just toiling away in the content fields of trying to build your authority in the way that some ripoff of some ripoff of some ripoff of some ripoff of Justin Welsh did. I just find that to be just a miserable existence, to fail at being a carbon copy of multiple carbon copies removed. I would much rather spend that time being somebody that I actually want to be, say the things that I want to say, because I have so much more fun with that. I have so much more fun just being myself than I would being a copy of somebody else.
It also allows you to escape the algorithm and escape chasing the algorithm. When you stop giving a shit about how well it performed, can I go 3% more, this and that? Look, I'm all for KPIs, but I've been in this game a long time, and I know the algorithm, they can turn the faucets off and on. And 1 week something's working and is nothing that you controlled or did. So at the end of the day, you're better off just to make content you're proud of, keep it rolling from there. Because chasing little algorithmic things, it's exhausting and it's not creatively fulfilling. And at the end of the day, it's like we're all going click clack on a keyboard. We may as well make it enjoyable.
Yeah, exactly. If you're spending all of that time chasing those algorithms, you're just going to be banging your head against the wall because it does constantly change, and you're just going to have this boogeyman to blame. You're going to have this thing of it was like, oh, this thing just ruined the content, rather than saying like, oh, maybe I just didn't have anything to say. Maybe the content that I made just kind of sucked. And if you focus more on, am I being authentic to myself? Am I having fun making the stuff that I'm making? It's so much easier to measure, and you put the blame where it belongs, on you. You put the blame on you when you go, "Oh, this didn't actually feel like something I should say. It doesn't feel like my voice. I didn't have fun making it." I can go more towards the things that feel more authentic to me. That's so much easier for me to follow, rather than some arbitrary, ever changing, ever evolving algorithm bias.
100%. That's spot on. Kevin, I feel like we could talk all day and I love it. Before I do want to wrap this up though. So before I let you go, let people know where they should connect with you online. Yeah, best places to go for that.
After shitting on LinkedIn for 30 minutes, I'm going to say follow me on LinkedIn. Because realistically, that is the place where you will find me the most, screaming into the void on a regular basis. So that's the place where I am around. I do say things on there on a 4 to 5 times a week basis. And so that is where you can usually find me either saying something about video and content and brand building, or making a dumb joke about LinkedIn trends that I see and yelling about AI. That's usually where you will find me.
I love it. And I'll put links to Kevin's LinkedIn in the notes. So you can go down and wherever you're watching this or listening to it and connect with Kevin right there. Thanks again for coming on today. I really appreciate it, Kevin.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. This was fun.
All right, everybody. That's it for this episode. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Shelton. I'll catch you next time.